Hi, this is Amanda Morgan from NotJustCute.com, and it is First Friday Q&A for the month of December. I had a great email written in from Christine, who works in a toddler preschool type environment, and she wrote a great email and essentially boils down to 3 questions. So I'm going to take those one at a time. The first one she asked about was creating a routine. She's noticed that it's easier to manage and work with a group of children if you've got a great routine, but she doesn't want to overmanage and overschedule these young children and wants to be able to encourage their creativity and their independence and imagination. So Christine, I think you're really right on got the nail on the head here. It's really a balance of those two. So you want to create a routine, give children something that they can expect and plan on. They usually behave better when they have something that they can rely on that's consistent. But within that routine, you want to have a lot of freedom and independence also. So I would say, for example, in a 2-hour preschool setting, you'd want to probably have about an hour, especially for your 2-year-olds, at least an hour of free choice time. Now that doesn't mean just everybody runs crazy around the room, but that you have a variety of activities that are planned, prepared, and set out, and that they're open-ended activities that the children can choose to come and go as they please. And so it gives them that independence, that freedom, that creativity and imagination, but also has a sense of organization and purpose within those activities. You also want to have a variety of types of activities, so active activities and quiet activities, more focused group activities, and more open-ended creative activities. So balance the type of activities that you have planned, both in your free choice activities and in the rest of the schedule of your day. You also want to have a variety of groupings, so some whole group times for, say, your music activities, some story activities, but also some small group times, probably at your snack times, or some small group activities, reading activities, and other things that you can work on in small groups. So they have a variety of groupings. And also, ideally, you want to have a fair bit of outdoor time as well. So the second question that Christine sent has to do with room arrangement. She says she has a pretty large room, and some people have mentioned maybe she needs to move some things around to create more focus or more defined areas in her room, but she is concerned about infringing on their creativity and their imagination. Once again, wants to leave some openness to the room as well. So she's asking about that. She says she also doesn't want kids running all over the room. So I just have this high-tech visual aid here on my whiteboard, but I just want to illustrate first how we tend to create rooms as teachers and as parents when we're creating a play area or a children's room or a classroom. We often make the mistake of just putting everything around the perimeter of the room. Now this does create a great openness to the room, but it also kind of creates a runway effect or a cyclone effect. Children just running around and things just moving all over the room, which may not be ideal for what you're doing. So let me just move some of these pieces around and illustrate some ways that we might break the area up a little bit. So it might mean adding some new pieces, maybe tables, bookcases, even carpets can help with area rugs to define an area. It might mean moving some things around that you already have. So some of our L-shaped bookcases and shelving units, you might consider turning those the other direction to create an enclosed space with the wall instead of putting it against a wall. Just turning some things around, putting some pieces back to back. So also creating kind of a wall effect again, or using the back side of an existing piece just to tape things on or put posters on, or using double-sided bookcases. And maybe even adding some pieces to your room. Oops. So that's just one quick example. So you can see now the flow of the room is more of a meandering path instead of a straight runway, which encourages running, or a cyclone, which also encourages running and a little bit of chaos. So think about how you might move your pieces around to create nooks and niches that are easier to create an invitation to the type of activity that you've created or the type of activity that you'd like to encourage in that area. Now that doesn't necessarily mean, Christine, that you need to block off each one and keep everything isolated. There are certain areas that are ideal to have near each other and even open to each other so that there can be some cross-play between those areas. So areas like you mentioned you have a block area and a truck area. Those two areas would be great by each other and open to each other to utilize the same materials and interplay. You also mentioned you have a dress-up area, also a baby's area, and a kitchen play area. Those are also great ones to have nearby and open to each other to incorporate play together. in those different areas. But there are some areas, I know for me personally, I usually pay attention to keeping my sensory play, my art play, my easels, those types of things that are more of a messy play, a fair distance and separated from my book areas, because I don't want those two necessarily interplaying so much. So think about the things that you do want together, open together, and things that you want to create a distance from. Also think about the type of activities, so loud activities versus quiet activities, so that they have the appropriate space for that type of activity. So those are a few things to consider, but really the bottom line is to think about what you intend in that area, and that purpose is going to define how you're going to do it. So think about what you envision happening there, how many children ideally would be using the space at the same time, what type of place, messy or clean, loud, quiet, busy, still, and kind of think about all of those different things as you create those areas so that you can decide what should be open, what should be more closed, what should be more of a flat surface versus more of a soft and comfy surface. So kind of creating your area, each area in mind, to decide what you're actually going to do with those things. But your floor plan, you want to avoid straight, long runways and big cyclone areas, because it's going to encourage that type of activity. Of course, you do want some big open areas like in your block area, your large group area, but your whole room being one big open area can encourage a type of play that can be less productive. You'll also want to consider maybe adding some areas. Now, Christine mentioned she has a dress-up area, baby area, truck area, block area, play kitchen with food, and a puzzle area. Those are great areas to have, but you might want to consider adding something like a sensory play area with a sensory bin or sensory table. You might want to add a book area with some board books, especially for your toddlers, so a nice comfortable area where they can just peruse books on their own, where they can be read to, maybe even having a listening area if that's appropriate, and if you have the appropriate supervision and help with that. You might want to add an art area or an easel where they can have some free choice time with art. And for especially older children, you probably want to add a writing area where children can experiment with different types of writing, different tools for writing, and incorporate that into some of their dramatic play activities as well. So again, just the quick answer, again, Christine, is to take some time thinking about your purpose and your expectations for those areas, and let that guide you as you create your classroom areas. So I hope that helps you with that question. The last thing that Christine asked about was nap time. She says she's really uncomfortable with forced nap times, children that are forced to lay down for an hour or two because that's what nap time is. And she says she feels like there are some children that just aren't tired, that have to just lay there. And she's noticed some parents that complain about children that are having a hard time sleeping or going to bed on time at night. And so she's feeling conflicted about forcing children to have nap time. So this is a tricky question. Something that varies in policy from center to center, from home to home. And so it's something that I think, first of all, you're going to want to talk to parents about. To back up, first of all, I think that you're right, that individual children are going to have different sleep habits, different sleep requirements. And so you got to take consideration of the individual, I think, when it comes to nap time. So talk to the parents, find out what's working and not working for them. If they're having a hard time getting them to sleep at night, it would be considerate to maybe back up on their nap time, have it earlier, or have less of a nap time. Or for some parents, they may prefer their children don't have a nap time. And if that works for you and you're noticing the same thing, that would be more ideal. But I agree with you, Christine. As you mentioned, I think it's ideal to have about a 30-minute quiet time that everybody is laying down, but some children are not going to go to sleep in 30 minutes. They're just not tired. So I agree with you. If there are children that after 30 minutes or 45 minutes or whatever time you're setting aside have laid there quietly, they've rested, but they're not going to sleep, ideally you'd have another quiet area, quiet room where they could listen to stories or do puzzles or do other quiet types of activities. It is important for children to get adequate rest, to have adequate downtime and quiet time, but I agree with you, to force them to just lay there seems a little bit insensitive to individual needs. And also, as you mentioned, could be insensitive to the parents' needs, the family needs, if it's interrupting the dynamic and the schedule and the flow there. But I think it is important to schedule, especially with your young children, your toddlers, to schedule in that time for resting, for quiet time, especially if it's an all-day program. For certain, you'd want to have some quiet time, some resting time. But I agree with you, Christine. I think ideally you would have a situation, a center which would allow the personnel and the room to be able to have some children that have a quiet time versus the children that actually need to be sleeping. So that's my personal thought. I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on it and how they work things out in their different situations. So that is the first Friday for today. I appreciate Christine. I appreciate you writing in. I want to encourage those of you with questions to send those in to questions@notjustcute.com. I appreciate you being here, reading and watching. I hope you have a great holiday season, and we'll meet back here probably the first Friday of January, possibly the second Friday of January, given the holiday schedule. So I hope you have a great holiday, and we'll meet you back here in January. This is Amanda Morgan from notjustcute.com. Thanks.